a child with a musical talent and then you allow the child to make a choice of what they want to do in their life, you're being a good parent. Likewise, if you choose not to have a child with Down syndrome, you're not expressing any attitude about people who exist with Down syndrome. This is Nick's flaw, because you haven't destroyed, you haven't killed a person with Down syndrome. You've selected between embryos. Now, you can treat people with Down syndrome with the utmost respect while still making choices about what sort of family you want to have. So these are completely independent variables that are constantly run together.
They're not independent. They're far from independent. If you look at the circumstances that I talked about before of the experiences of women who choose to keep their children when they've been diagnosed during pregnancy with a major abnormality and the pressures that are applied to them and the difficulties that they face, these are not neutral things. And that would be the same sort of thing that would apply if the technology is used in a discriminatory way. That will apply across the board. And the people who survive with disabilities will be the survivors of a medical process, those who escape the screening process. And so that they will be seen as differently. And it's certainly their parenting and their right to have children, even children with a disability, will be restricted.
Look, I have asthma. If I could use this technology in the future, I would select against embryos with asthma. I show the utmost respect to other people with asthma, and I respect myself. I don't think that I'm treating anyone badly by saying that I would select against asthma. It's it can be bothersome and it can be life-threatening. And I don't think
we'll never be able to do it.
Yeah, well, no.
That's pretty much where I thought we might end, actually. Thanks for that.
There's one.
We want one more.
Okay. The last one here.
This is the third last question.
The third last one.
My name's Monica. I'm an obstetric and gynecological trainee. I just wanted to ask of the panel a very real issue and whether we should or is there discrimination involved. Obesity in our society, and obesity can be a factor for infertility. Should we be offering IVF to people who are obese and cannot get pregnant because of obesity and the ethical issues around that?
Wow. Congratulations. You've done something that I didn't think was possible.
Look, this is a responsibility for illness question about whether we should discriminate against people whether they're so-called responsible for their illness. A similar one is, should we give smokers lung transplants? Should we give alcoholics liver transplants? So the idea, or one of the objections to offering IVF to obese people, is that the obesity is their choice. They should lose weight themselves. We should be prioritising other people who aren't causing their own illnesses that are resulting in their medical problem. The problem with this is that it's very illiberal, because we pick out something like smoking or obesity, something that we can point to that people are responsible, and that we don't make fine-grained judgments about everyone's responsibility for their health or illness in a fine-grained way. And my view is that we don't have an accurate way of attributing how much people are actually responsible for their illnesses to be able to use this sort of metric to say, well, you cause your obesity, you're not going to. And also, they may be partly biological, they may have problems of strength of will, impulse control, they may be eating too many marshmallows whenever they see them, and it's going to be very difficult to implement this in health policy. So I think you should treat an obese person the same as a non-obese person.
I just don't think we should be punishing people for anything that's to do with their behaviour like that or otherwise. I certainly don't think we should be punishing people who are obese. I mean, they suffer enough with it. The issue of obesity is relevant, though, and you would be encouraging somebody who was infertile and obese to try and lose weight, because that gives them a better chance. And that raises another issue I think that we haven't really discussed, and that is that there is amongst the infertile population, there is a proportion of natural fertility that's still there. That is, most of them who have not succeeded in 12 months still have a chance of conceiving. There's a strong natural fertility rate. And what bothers me is the way in which people go so rapidly to IVF. And we used to, when I started out on this debate, microsurgical repair of fallopian tubes was very common and was quite successful. At the Queen Vic, they had figures of about 60% pregnancy rates following tubal repair. Now it's hardly ever heard of, and everybody says, oh, it's not very successful, but it was successful back then. And I just wonder what happened to that technology. It seems to have been displaced by IVF. And what's happened to actually assisting people to use their natural fertility, encouraging them to identify when they are most likely to be fertile and so on. That sort of information helps. And I've seen a study of patients who had been trying for 12 months, were instructed in where their peak fertility was and how to identify it, and there was something like a 62% pregnancy rate within 4.5 months in that group. Within that group were a group of ex-IVF patients who had failed on IVF, and the pregnancy rate in that group was around about 40% ex-IVF. I mean,
say maybe God's punished them by making them infertile for being obese. It's just a societal issue in terms of the impact to society that obesity has in terms of healthcare costs, and if we're talking about benefit for the children, I was more interested in the ethical issues around IVF for obesity.
Can I just come back to what Nick said? I must agree, Nick, I do agree with you that people are going to do IVF too easily these days, and it's a patient pressure. You know, we've all got central heating, air-conditioned cars, remote controls for television. We want to get pregnant now, and we don't want to wait, and I think there's a lot of patient pressure. I do also believe that sometimes doctors opt towards IVF because that's most likely to work too early. Coming back to microsurgery, I'm afraid those figures you're quoting were sterilisation reversal and not for damaged tubes, and really the treatment of damaged tube or microsurgery is pretty useless because you can't make a silk purse out of the sow's ear. So I think there's a big place for IVF, but I do agree that some people want to do it too quickly. And of course the other problem is someone turns up at 39, 41, 42, like I've had this week, and of course they want to get straight into IVF because they know time's running out. So there's a lot of reasons why people do IVF quite quickly, but sometimes I think it is too quickly.
Okay, we have to shut up now. So I'm going to bring at least my part of involvement for this to a close. I just want to ask you first, although you'll probably be asked again, to thank the panel for a discussion that I think could have gone on for weeks.
This is Big Ideas from the ABC.